Greetings and welcome, or welcome back as the case may be. Today's Tuesday, so we're going to be reading from a story. We're going to continue on with My Story Family Secrets, which appeared in the anthology Return to Ephraim Falls, Tales of Lost Souls. To this point, to kind of recap, we've found out that we've had Tori, a young woman who's been assaulted, and her mother shows up to disrupt the assault and ends up sending her home to deal with the assaulter or the perpetrator. And in that, she reveals that she's not Tori's actual real mother, that she found Tori abandoned in the woods, and that there may be something a little more to what's going on than appears. So let's pick up there and continue on with the story. Somewhere along the line, she must have lit another cigarette, because smoke puffed from her nostrils. Mark didn't notice or care that her hands were empty. He was licking his lips as he watched her undress. "You're a crazy bitch," he said with a laugh. He stopped laughing and brandished the pistol. "But you talk too much. Finish stripping and get over there against the wall." Celine stepped out of her pants. "No, you get against the wall. Or maybe start running like I suggested." Her voice was still a silky caress, at odds with her chain-smoking habit. Mark opened his mouth to say something, but his intended words turned into a scream. She struck fast like a snake, grabbed his wrist and twisted. Bones snapped like dried twigs and ivory spikes tore through his jacket. The gun dropped to the broken concrete. She grabbed him by the front of his jacket, lifted him completely off the ground, and threw him against the wall. He hit with enough force to lose his breath and gray out. "I told you to make this at least somewhat interesting and run." Her voice was no longer a silky tone, but a low guttural growl. Her eyes weren't just glittering, they glowed with a menacing red light, the pupils now vertical slits. Mark regained his breath and couldn't believe what he was seeing. The shape of the woman stretched out and thickened. Even in the low light, he could see the sheen of scales covering her skin. He didn't need another warning. With a cry, he turned and ran. He'd made it 20 yards up the alley when he heard an animalistic growl behind him. Somehow, he ran faster. He'd almost made it to Orange Avenue when he heard the clacking on the roof above him. He didn't slow down, but glanced up and cried out at what he saw. Oh, God! A long, gleaming serpentine form with scales of gold and green flowed along the edge of the roof. Talons that flickered in the low light like silver spikes gripped the edge of the building and dug into the brick. A great golden manes surrounded its head, and fleshy whiskers drooped from the end of its long snout. Glowing red eyes stared into his. The monster opened its mouth and a gout of flame billowed forth. Mark leaped to the side to avoid the fire, but still feeling its blistering heat. Another cry, this one more of a sob, and he ran across the avenue and cut north toward Main Street. Celine watched him go and chuckled. Ephraim Falls isn't a big town, so Mark's flight soon took him beyond the streetlights and sidewalks. He barreled into the trees and undergrowth at the edge of town with his lungs burning. Celine stayed on top of the building, watching. She waited, long enough that Mark slowed to catch his breath. He thought he might get away among the trees, or maybe she would let him go. Celine sprang from the top of the building and slithered through the air until she was above the street lights and nothing more than a passing shadow below. She followed Mark's path and wound her way silently through the trees. When Mark stopped, she dropped on him, pinning him to the ground with a great clawed foot. Mark screamed. "Please, let me go. I'll leave Tori alone. I'll disappear. I'll leave Ephraim Falls forever. Just let me go." The claw lifted from him. Reptilian lips peeled back from ivory fangs in a vicious imitation of a smile. Celine's voice vibrated with a purr as she said, "Do that some more. I like it when a man begs." A forked tongue flicked out to lick the side of his face. Mark's eyes widened, and he scurried backwards, but is hindered by his useless arm cradled against his chest. Smoke billowed from Celine's mouth, and she flicked him with a silvery talon. Mark cried out in pain as he rolled over his disabled arm. "Run, little morsel. You haven't made this very interesting." Scrambling to his feet, Mark ran. Fire sizzled behind him, but he didn't turn to look. He wound and twisted his way through the trees and crashed through brush. The sounds of pursuit followed at a slower pace, but he couldn't keep going. His breath came in ragged gasps, and his legs burned from exertion. As he slowed, there came a rushing sound behind him. He dodged blindly, but the razor point of a talon scored down his back. Mark stumbled forward and fell. Jagged spikes of bone from his arm stabbed into his chest. He tried to scream, but only managed to gurgle and groan. With a delicate touch, Claw rolled him over to look up into those gleaming red eyes. "I can't just let you go, you know. Later, you'd just start thinking it was some hallucinogen in the smoke. Then you'd bother Tori again." She brought her snout down to his face. Smoke rose in wisps from her nostrils. "And I would do anything for my daughter." The snout drew back, and Mark gave one last scream that cut off sharply. And that's the end. That's the end of Family Secrets. I hope you'll check it out. We're on Amazon. Moorhead Friends Writing Group. Look up Return to Ephraim Falls, or maybe the first in the book in the series, Welcome to Ephraim Falls. Anyway, I hope you've enjoyed the story. It's a bit of a horror, so a bit of a shift from what I normally write. But I thought it would be enjoyable. If you did like it, give us a thumbs up, give us a subscribe, and we'll talk to you next time. Have a good day. Bye.